It's Wednesday. You know what that means. Time for the Southern California Writers Association Hump Day Book Tour. I'm your host, Maddie Margarita, here with Diana Pardee on tech. Every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, the Southern California Writers Association welcomes a different author to our Facebook group to talk about their work and themselves and maybe share a writing tip or two. So take a break, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy as the SCWA Hump Day Book Tour proudly welcomes Brad Parks. Hi, Brad.
Hi, Maddie. It's good to be here with you and Diana and Diana's camel. That is a breathtaking camel. I'm
Okay,
really
Tom.
happy to have that as my friend and backdrop here. So hello everyone. So I have to apologize. I am not zooming from my normal spot today. You see, I have a window behind me. I have like my kids' play stuff behind me, and it's because there are some people working on my house right now. So if you hear like thumps and bangs and drills coming from up above, that's why. But this actually brings me to a writing tip. Maddie said I should give some writing tips and kind of talk about the writing life. And this tip is it's about what I call the myth of the perfect writing day. So back when I was working full time as a journalist and still trying to write novels and whatnot, I had this idea that someday maybe I would be a full-time writer, and that when that happened, everything would be perfect. Right? Like I would just roll out of bed perfectly refreshed every morning. I would clearly have a manservant who would, come like open my laptop for me at like 45 degrees, prop open the window of the, to let the cool tropical breezes from my hacienda coming in, this sort of thing. In reality, even when you're a full-time writer, and I'm very blessed and very fortunate to be a full-time writer now, there's no such thing as the perfect writing day, right? Like I was telling Diana and Maddie before, like I slept horribly last night. I've had insomnia ever since this pandemic started. So I didn't really sleep much. My wife is working, so I had the kids all morning and everything like that. I've got these guys banging on everything up, like banging on my head literally right now. And yet what I'm gonna do when I'm done here is leave. And even though I struggled like crazy to write my words this morning, I'm going to go reposition myself. I'm going to go to this little pond nearby here, which I go to the pond because one, it feels like Walden, and two, there's no wireless internet at the pond. And so like the greatest distractor ever created for writers is not available to me. So I'm going to go to the pond and get my damn words done today on this really less than ideal day. However, so Diana told me and Maddie told me to come here and talk about my latest book, which is called Interference. Since this is for the Southern California Writers Association and I am talking to fellow writers, I figured I'd give you more of the writer, how this book came to be, rather than if you were reader fan, how this book came to be. Because I think we've all had that book that kind of rattles around in our brain. And for me, one of the books anyway that was doing that for a long time was I've always been a physics nerd. Like I not that I was ever good at doing physics, but I loved the ideas of physics and kind of the stories behind physics. And so I always wanted to write a novel involving physics. But I probably approached this at 2 or 3 different times over the years, and each time I would kind of hit this wall where I just couldn't make my book fit the science the way I wanted to. And finally, this was probably about 2018, I guess, when I began writing this novel. I had the sudden brainstorm. No. Don't fit your book to the science. Fit your science to the book. And within about 15 minutes, I had this brainstorm of how I was going to do this. Now, the moral of this part of the story is if you're going to choose friends in life, choose interesting friends. So I had this buddy I went to college with who actually could do physics. He was a physics major. He ended up graduating and going to Harvard, where he got a double PhD in physics and the history of physics. And he is now an MIT physics professor. And his name is Dave Kaiser. He's a real person. I mentioned him in the acknowledgments. And I'd always kind of kept up with Dave's career because I have this interest in physics and he's my friend and everything like that. And Dave turns out to be one of the scientists who proved this baffling topic called quantum entanglement, right? Now, quantum entanglement, we're going to have our science lesson right now, is and this is a true thing, every now and then two particles can be born entangled. And when that happens, you can actually separate them by any distance you want to, and they remain coordinated with each other. So like you tickle one and the other goes, oh, I felt that. And that happens instantly. Which when this was first proposed, actually Einstein was the one who kind of first brought this theory to be, because he was looking at the equations of quantum physics and going, wait, guys, if this equation is true and this equation is true, then this thing called entanglement must be true. And this was a sign to Einstein that quantum entanglement was, or quantum theory in general, was broken. It was just completely messed up, because how is it possible that you could have this coordination happen faster than the speed of light? Because these particles can be galaxies apart and this coordination still happens. And to Einstein, this was a problem because nothing is faster than the speed of light. Well, it turns out Einstein was wrong. And my buddy Dave was on the team of scientists that proved definitively, beyond the shadow of any doubt whatsoever, using quasars that were 8 billion light years that way and 12 billion light years that way, that in fact quantum entanglement is absolutely a real thing. So I was kind of thinking about Dave's work, and I was thinking, well, so entanglement, like as a fiction writer, like things getting entangled, I mean, that's what we do, right? We entangle things. And so I was thinking, okay, so I know the physics, and the physics is, that you can have particles entangled, and you can have systems of particles entangled. We've even now entangled molecules and kind of larger objects. And if this is all true, what if human beings could be entangled? Like, haven't you ever felt like you were entangled with someone else, whether it was your lover or your sibling, or, the people talk about twin sense, that kind of a thing. And I was just kind of fascinated with this concept. And then the further what if, and, this is going to be a crime thriller after all, so I need a crime. What if we could use quantum entanglement to find a missing person? So I have this idea, and then of course you need to start populating an idea with characters. How do you build a character, right? Well, for me, actually, I'm going to tell you just how haphazardly I build them. Like, I have to like my protagonist. That's like my one rule. Like, I'm not going to spend 400 pages with a jerk, right? And so I was in the midst of brainstorming this novel, and we got this new neighbor. Her name is Melissa, and she is a librarian who has hearing loss. And I kind of met her, and I just liked her. We enjoyed chatting and everything like that. She's funny and smart and good neighbor to have and everything like that. And I was thinking about this protagonist. I'm like, what if I made my protagonist a librarian with hearing loss? Hearing loss, that's not something you often find in a thriller. Like, and that always excites me, right? When you feel like, okay, I get what it is I'm doing here. I'm writing genre fiction, and there are always parts about genre fiction that have to be familiar, right? We don't want to, completely blow our readers' minds with something so experimental they don't know what we're doing. But there always has to be something that keeps us excited as writers too, something that feels novel, something that feels different. And for me, that was a character with hearing loss, because one of the things that always fascinates me about what we conventionally call disabilities are how often they come with special abilities as well. One of my favorite examples of this is Down syndrome. I had a cousin who had Down syndrome. Did you know that people with Down syndrome, if you ask them, are you satisfied with your life? 98% of them say yes. You can find no other cohort of people who is that satisfied with their lives. And isn't that a special kind of ability that comes with this quote unquote disability? In the case of somebody with hearing loss, and this was true with my neighbor Melissa, she taught herself how to read lips. And sometimes in the hearing community they call that speech reading. Wouldn't it be cool to have a character who could use the ability to read lips at some point? And that was kind of one of those things I kind of slid in my back pocket as I got going with this. So basically, I have my protagonist, this librarian with hearing loss. I give her a husband who is a physics professor, who has been kind of poking and prodding at the mysteries of the quantum universe. And suddenly he goes missing. He has been kidnapped. We have to use quantum entanglement to find him. And that is the premise of Interference. the book that is now available wherever books are sold. And yes, folks, that's how you have to do it. You have to be that smarmy about it when you push your book, right? So I promised Maddie I would leave a little bit of time at the end in our Hump Day celebration for questions from her, from you, from anyone. I'm around. I'm good. Fire away.
Okay, so when you talked about your character and the fact that you like your characters, but you still torture them in strange and unusual ways.
Yes.
So how do you approach that, and what does that say about you?
It says pity my wife, but you know, it's funny because Maddie, I sometimes feel like real guilt over what I do, because I do like my characters so much, and then I have to do horrible things to them. But I really believe that a writer has to take what I call the anti-Hippocratic oath. So if the Hippocratic oath is do no harm, the anti-Hippocratic oath is do lots of harm. And you know, it's always fascinating to me how, and you know, again, we're all readers and writers at the same time, right? For me, the thing that really just keeps me ripping through those pages more than anything is, oh my God, how are the characters possibly going to get out of this mess? And when you make the answer to that seem so impossible, and hopefully if you're, you know, yay far into a book, you care about the characters and what's going on, yeah, you just have to make it as difficult as you possibly can for them and take the anti-Hippocratic oath.
Well, maybe that's why you can't sleep. But we have a question here from Michael Martinez. How do you make the transition from journalist to novelist? What were the challenges?
Yeah, the journalist to novelist thing. It's been a long, slow process. So I have not been a journalist since 2008. I took a buyout from my newspaper job then and started writing novels full time. I think it's really it's a head scratcher at first, because of course, you know, I always joke that back when I was a journalist, if I made stuff up, I'd get fired. Now, as a novelist, if I don't make stuff up, I'll get sued, right? So it's a very different mindset. But, you know, I think for me, like, I knew the elements of a story. Like, journalism had taught me that, right? But then it becomes a question of giving myself license to actually make stuff up, like knowing what a good story is, to fill in those details, which was something, of course, I was very, well, I just didn't do as a journalist for many years. But so it became a process of like connecting almost with a more childlike state. Like, I think nobody has more wild, wonderful imaginations than, like, you know, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, you know, who are not quite bounded by that adult thing, have not been pushed into that box yet their brains are kind of big enough to spew out some crazy stuff. Is, you know, kind of getting in touch with that. And I guess just you know, for me, it was like my early books were written from the standpoint of an investigative newspaper reporter who covered crime in Newark, New Jersey. And I was an investigative newspaper reporter who covered crime in Newark, New Jersey. So there was a lot of, like, you know, ripping from real life. Then slowly as I went along, I became just more comfortable with, okay, that feels like it's real. And that something that felt like it was real was just as good as something that actually was real. So it's been a long, slow process of really giving myself permission to truly be a fiction writer.
Okay, so, and one final question. So you were talking about this journey to where you are. The concept of your book is such a huge concept, and it's so out there, it's so fresh, it's so insightful and challenging intellectually. What do you hope that people feel like when they finish reading Interference? I mean, what kind of an experience do you hope that they've had, or what stays with them?
So less scared than I was when I was writing it, because yeah, it is big concept. So I don't, you know, I am not one, Maddie, that like, it's not for me to decide, you know, kind of what readers take away from it. All I can decide is, like, yeah, my own, like, what I put into it. So certainly what I put into it, like, and I think this is another good thing for the SCWA. I think if there is not something about your book that scares you a little bit, maybe it's not a book you should be writing. Like that, I think there has to be something that does kind of terrify you, that like gives you that feeling of, wow, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off. You know, and for me, certainly in this book, it was like, you know, taking this kind of big concept in physics and running with it and seeing where it took me. And that was really, really scary. But I personally believe, and look, we all get our different answers to this, but like, there's energy in being afraid, right? There is like waking up and knowing, man, I don't know if I can pull this thing off. I always say that like desperation is a very important part of my process. And part of that desperation, where it comes from, is like, yeah, I don't know if I can do this. So yes, going back to the question, I hope readers are infinitely more satisfied at the end of this than I was throughout while writing.
Okay, that's fair enough. So, I mean, I'm sure that everybody's feeling the same way that I'm feeling right now, which is I might listen to this video every morning just to get me going, and that they're intrigued by the book. It's Interference by Brad Parks. Brad, where can people find Interference?
Wherever books are sold. So however
fine quality books are sold, right?
Wherever quality books and/or my books are sold. Okay. Yes, it's everywhere.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. Good luck on the book. I know you don't need it, but good luck anyway. I want to thank everybody who's with us. If you enjoyed this video, which I'm sure you did, please like, subscribe, and share. If you can't buy Brad's book, which I strongly encourage you to do, there are lots of ways you can support your favorite authors. One is by leaving a review. Another is telling a friend how much you enjoyed the book. So hopefully you'll do that and stay with us. And we will see you next Wednesday, next Hump Day. Until then, stay safe, stay sane. Bye.